Good morning, everyone. Thank you for staying until Saturday, just for me. No, it's been a great couple of days. I'm excited to share my presentation with you. As Steve mentioned, today I'm talking about valuing context and character over clicks and conversions. So it's just a very nice alliteration to basically say, how do we bring humanity into a very data-driven world? So I'll start with a short intro on what my team owns, how it works, and by it I mean how do you bring the humanity, the human being into the room. In marketing we talk about the consumer and consumer behavior and target demographic and all these buzzwords, and sometimes we forget there are real live human beings who are behind the screen. And for our company, our tagline is here to help life go right. Well, I can't help life go right if I'm so focused on my low funnel KPIs. So after that, I'll go through 5 areas of value that aren't necessarily low funnel KPIs, and then my key takeaways, and then we'll do a little Q&A. So as far as my team, as Steve mentioned, marketing manager at State Farm, all things P&C, driving leads. So whether that be driving people through social, digital, programmatic to statefarm.com to get a quote, or driving leads directly to agents, or driving direct mail that agents purchase and sometimes we subsidize. Everything is about how do we get the right people in the funnel so that they can eventually become policy holders. It's nice having such clear KPIs, but if I were to only focus on driving those numbers and driving low costs in my dashboards, I would miss out on the quality and other important things that are going on. So how it works. So how we think about driving thinking about the human being in what we do is, for each slide, I'll go through this 4-part system. So what was the challenge? What was the pain point? What was the exploration? How did we ideate on fixing this challenge? And then what was a data-driven action that we took? Everyone's very familiar with that kind of process. But then I say we have a humanity or sanity check. What is a real live human experiencing with what we're doing? Do we need to change course and do something else? Or are we on the right path? So here we go. So the first area of value for us is viewability. So what a fun day when our leadership figured out that not all ads are seen online. And it was like, well, that number should be 100%. Everyone make that number 100%. And we're like, okay, let's regroup on how we're going to do this. So the challenge was, what is the right target for ad viewability? And how to communicate the value of non-viewable ads. Our ideation or exploration was 100% viewability is not efficient or practical, and there is value in non-viewable impressions from a cost perspective. Our data-driven approach was evaluate viewability to determine what is both measurable and actionable. So, we said to ourselves, what would a human do? Humans like to scroll. Surprise! So if my team, my programmatic team at OMD is purchasing ads based on the probability of being viewed, well, the system might say for a page that's already loaded, highest probability top of the page. But a human being would say, I love this article, and I don't want to sit at the title part of the page. I want to scroll down to the bottom. So you may get to an ad that the system said didn't have a high probability of being viewed, but at the end of the day was a better ad because someone spent more time at the bottom. So what we do now instead, we still report out on viewability, we still have benchmarks for it, but how much time does a person need to spend with a banner to convert? So we now work with a brand safety partner. We can measure time spent, and now we're working on finding that point of how much time does it take to get to conversion, instead of just 100% of an OK metric. So the next one is overlap and attribution. So if I didn't mention before, State Farm works with OMD, and we have an amazing programmatic team that often come to us with their challenges and what they're taking the initiative to do to solve them. So this was one of those. So as we talked about the past couple of days, there's no one DSP to rule them all. There's no one platform that can find everyone and do everything that you need. So our challenge is, how do we effectively target and reach consumers across the programmatic space? We went through this. Using multiple DSPs may have limited visibility into cross-platform touchpoints. So what our programmatic team came up with is tagging all of our media through a DMP and using that to dictate frequency instead of just having frequency capping within each DSP. So we said, let's have a human moment. Let's see, what is the humanity sanity check? Humans don't like feeling bombarded by ads. No surprise there. And after we thought of that, okay, we said, we think we're on the right track. So by saying we're going to cap frequency globally and not at each DSP level, we shouldn't be over-frequencing people. And at the end of the day, if we have to err on the side of less is more, then we will do that. So the third one that I want to walk through is our whitelist. I'm sure all of you are familiar and probably use whitelists. Our challenge was, how do we ensure relevant, brand safe, high quality inventory and programmatic? So we all know State Farm. It's a very old brand. It's a very conservative, well-known brand. So it just takes one time. It just takes one person to see something where it shouldn't have been seen, take a screenshot, put it on Twitter, and then public affairs is calling me. So we put a lot of effort into whitelist implementation. And our data-driven piece was that we decided to develop our whitelist through ranking high traffic sources as well as historical data. So we said, nailed it, whitelist, approved, never gonna have an ad in a bad place. But what was the human element? For us, and from the letters that we have received, humans expect good brands to be on good websites. Humans don't care that we have most of our media runs through OMD, but we have other agencies for smaller programs. And humans don't care we have 19,000 agents who may run their own media, and as their independent contractors, I can't legally tell them not to do something. What humans care about is what they see and what their experience is. So we said, how can we put more rigor around this? Let's have manual checks. So our agency will manually go through the list, and after they go through it, they'll send it to my team. We don't go through every site, but we might go through 100 sites and click on the site and say, this feels safe, or it doesn't feel safe, and we need to take it out for X, Y, Z reasons. Another thing that we do is we partner internally with other teams that run media if they're not going through OMD, and we say, these are our best practices, and this is the list that we've come up with and what we do. Let's all be on the same page, so if we do get an alert or an angry letter or there's an issue from public affairs, we can quickly address it. So the fourth one I want to talk about is sponsored content. So how do we reach consumers in a relevant and unobtrusive way? Obviously, organic and thematically similar branded messaging can yield better results. So we're like, we've got this one. When I first got to State Farm about 4.5 years ago, we'd put on slides, we have 500 pieces of content with this publisher and 300 pieces of content with that publisher, and we have our own website called Simple Insights where we give you important information because insurance is complicated and what you should do and always trying to help people. Well, and then we've done broadcast extensions like with This Is Us. Lots of cool stuff that look great on slides, but are we really helping people? Our insight was that humans love content that is relevant to them. So were all 500 pieces with that one publisher relevant to the human being we're trying to talk to? Maybe not. So what we've done instead is say, how can we leverage programmatic to be more relevant? How do we measure that it's being engaging? So we use native programmatic advertising to do this. And not just serving native ads, but pixeling publisher sites and optimizing off of that. So lastly, which we've talked about, or other people have talked about this week, dynamic creative optimization, or DCO. How do we better personalize and optimize our messaging strategy? Pretty obvious. More relevant messaging will drive incremental lift versus standard creative. So we ran a small test around a renters campaign using dynamic geo information, and we saw a double-digit increase in efficiency while also doubling our budget. And so we've decided to continue and try to scale up and implement dynamic creative variables across top-performing targeting tactics. So essentially, we feel like it's not just about only finding one or two variables that would be great in DCO, but how do we find the most relevant variables for the people who we're trying to find? Our human insight was humans like customization, not creepiness. So instead of just building a giant matrix and saying we have all this data, let's multivariate test every single piece and see what works, what is the most relevant data to a person on a platform for what we're trying to sell them. So if I happen to know your favorite color, which I don't, but if I did, would that be helpful in the ad to get you to get a quote? No. Or if I know what Netflix show you watched last night before you went to bed, which I don't, but if I did, that also shouldn't be in our ad. What should be in our ad based on what you need and what we're trying to sell? So my key takeaways for each one of these. So for viewability, we went from just IAB standards to time spent to conversion. For overlap and attribution, we went from DSP frequency capping to DMP global frequency capping. For the whitelist, we went from just looking at performance to performance in the context of brand health metrics. For sponsored content, we went from quantity and how cool is it to be on BuzzFeed, guys, to instead algorithmic bidding and engagement metrics. And then lastly, for DCO, we went from granular real-time changes to optimal amount of personalization. So that is my spiel. Any questions?
Hi, this is Juan from ARP. I had a question regarding how you selected good websites.
Yeah.
Because often it's very subjective unless you have guiding principles. The other thing is if you are too selective, do you see that you are restricting traffic? Because you can't control who your audience, what type of content they're consuming. So how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for us, good websites, so you've got things that are obvious where we want to be. Sometimes there are some places where we want to be on a certain part of a website. So like Huffington Post can be controversial, but they also have a whole section called Good News. So when we make a stand for something that we want to be on, but we know might not be favorable to one of our customers, we just have a boilerplate ready for, we understand your concerns, but we feel it's important to be around good news stories, so this is what we do. And then sometimes we just miss out on where some people are. I mean, the people who are on, I don't know, I like cats who jump up and down.com probably also go to Facebook. So sometimes we're just like, it's not all about the long tail, we'll just be without that risk.
Good morning, thank you. I'm wondering if, in the insurance business, there's this temptation for, and maybe even at the targeting level, for a little bit of ambulance chasing. Flooding areas, fires, so-and-so. What threshold do you allow yourself to target people based upon insurance needs without necessarily feeling like, oh man, we don't want to have all of our ads appear in California or where the fires are or something else like that? Of course, it might not be good for your own financials to be there, but I'm just wondering, you must have some sort of internal decisioning tree about how are we going to target based on people who really need insurance for probably home, I'm thinking, without being too obvious about it.
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's a delicate balance. So we do have just some standard rules in place around, not serving where we don't. We're in most states, but not all of them. So things like that we already have put into place. We analyze areas that are best for growth. Where are we more price competitive? All of those things go into how we build our buys and optimize. We also, like I said, tagline is here to help life go right. So if the indicators and the data that I have show that you are moving or you're getting married or you have a need, I'm going to show you an ad. When you get to the agent's going to ask you the relevant questions and recommend the type of coverage that you might need. So that's how we balance that.
Brittany, yesterday Juan was talking about the importance of her suppression list,
Yeah.
and the problem that we've heard a few times here, that people notice retargeting probably most and are irritated by it most when they're actually being hit about something they already bought or from a company that they already are a part of. So what's your approach to, especially since you're moving things more towards the DMP and away from the DSP and you're getting that global view of your consumer, how are you treating existing consumers differently in terms of how you're targeting ads?
Yeah, so on my side, that's all acquisition based. Obviously we use all of our CRM data for suppression. On the current customer side, we're just very careful in how we target, how we use those lists. We have propensity models for what products. We have over 100 products, so what you might need and seeing the right creative. There's a lot of testing in the DCO space on that side. We also have a whole nother program just called Happy Neighbors. So probably a couple years ago, it really was like either your acquisition or your cross-sell. But there's a whole retention piece. Once you become a customer, how do you need to be onboarded? What is your whole digital experience? What are ways we can surprise and delight you? We have a whole site that's just about put in your zip and we'll tell you where you can volunteer. So what are other ways that we can provide value besides you just had a claim event and you need help right now?
How do you use your local agents within the advertising as well?
Yeah, so obviously agents can do their own advertising, but we do provide, another team provides a way that we can buy it more efficiently and then an agent can opt into it, or, and then we have actual agents on the ads. So if you see an agent.
That's part of the creative. You can actually integrate
part of the
that.
creative, yeah. Yeah.
Good morning, Brittany. This is Jake from Ericsson Emoto. This was awesome. As I was watching it, it felt to me like a very open marketplace presentation. So I was wondering if you could comment for a moment about how you think through walled gardens versus open, how you make budgeting decisions, how you get to the point of being willing to trade off some of this control for what you get in walled gardens.
Yeah, we're obviously in the walled gardens because we need to be. That's where people are. As far as how we look at budget, I guess it just depends on really what the partner can bring to us. So if there are unique beta and alpha opportunities with a walled garden partner, or something unique that we can test in this microcosm, can we then take those learnings, even if we can't take the data out, can we take learnings and do it somewhere else? So like when we first started DCO, we have one agency, but they're split into teams, and they were like, we're doing Facebook DCO, programmatic DCO, and like Google has this product. I was like, no, but they're all DCO, so we need one strategy. Who's gonna learn what, and how are we gonna move that across everything? But it is nice, someone mentioned earlier, having a bunch of different agencies. No one's gonna call up another agency and say, we were under budget, here you go. So it's nice having one group, and then the client can say, we see more opportunity here or there, let's shift some things around.
Brittany, that was great. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.